Welcome to the pilot episode of the ThinkerNick Podcast. I am your host, Nick Daniels, and today I'm joined by my co-host, Nicola Tyler. How are you today?
I'm very well, thank you, Nicholas.
That's good. How is sunny South Africa?
It's a cracking day. Started out with a little bit of rain, but it seems to have brightened up.
Oh, that's good.
Maybe time for a run later.
Oh, that's great. All right. So today we are going to talk about why we started the ThinkerNick podcast. So Nicola, why don't you tell us a little bit of background, a little bit about you, so the listeners can have an idea or paint a picture of kind of who you are.
Sure. So born and raised in the UK, as you know, and first sort of set foot in South Africa in 1988. Swimming against the tide somewhat. A lot of people were leaving South Africa at those times, and I decided to come more as a sort of a little bit of curiosity and exploration, but also with a touch of ignorance. You know, grew up in a fairly small town and village in the UK, and fairly protected and sheltered life, but had managed to get myself to London and worked in London for a couple of years, working as an assistant in public relations, in architecture and different things. And when I came to South Africa, I was fortunate enough to be sent on a seminar by my boss at the time. And I remember thinking, wow, that was so amazing. I wish education was like this. It was just a different way of learning. And granted, education has evolved a lot over the years, but in those days, this was a radically different way of finding out about the world. So I put pen to paper, literally. Well, I actually typed a letter, and I wrote to the seminar organizer to see if I could get in touch with the person who presented the seminar, because I wanted their job. So basically, I think it was either in 1989, I think it happened, that I came across an industry that fascinated me so much that 30 years later, I'm still in it. And I've spent most of my career in this seminar industry, starting out doing first sort of event administration, then moving into marketing, then moving into general management. There was a time in my career when I ran what was then the biggest seminar company in South Africa. I didn't run it alone. I had a managing director and a team of people. And later, I was fortunate enough to work with the author, Edward de Bono, who was the inventor or coiner of the phrase lateral thinking. And that sort of set me off in another direction where I instead of sort of being on the marketing and admin side or operations side, really, of running the businesses, I ended up on the stage side, doing a lot of presenting based on thinking skills, and eventually moving that into facilitating strategy conversations for large organizations. And a big chunk of those strategy conversations is around thinking. And then today, I guess I could say I've sort of, I run a business with a business partner that focuses on leadership development. And we also facilitate strategy conversations and help companies make decisions. And that's about it. I've done it a little bit, mostly in South Africa, but also over the years in other countries. So I've worked in a number of different countries for clients internationally.
Interesting. So for the listeners out there, Nicola is in fact my aunt, and I didn't even know that she did half of those things. So it's very interesting for me to find that out. I know what she does now, but I didn't know the journey that it took to get there. So a little bit of background about me. I was born in South Africa. Both my parents are British. They moved over. Obviously, my mother is Nicola's sister. And I went to boarding school when I was 9 years old because it's what I wanted to do, and it was the best decision of my life. And then from there, I moved to Cape Town and did a bit of studying. I studied a BCom degree in marketing because I thought that was the industry I wanted to go into. turns out I didn't know what I wanted to do after I finished studying. So I moved to Vietnam. And when I got to Vietnam, I took up teaching English, which is what most travelers do when they move here. And I found that I actually enjoyed doing that. So I squirreled away some money and I paid for myself to get a teaching degree. And since then, I have worked at some really, really good schools in Ho Chi Minh City. I'm currently in my 4th year of teaching at an international school and enjoying it. But I find that I need to do something else. I feel like teaching isn't I'm not happy just teaching. So I feel like I really want to do something else with my time. And I listen to a lot of podcasts. And the podcasts that I listen to bring me great joy and I learn a lot from them. So I thought to myself, why not start my own podcast? And that is basically how we got onto the subject of ThinkerNick, which is the podcast that you guys are listening to today.
Brilliant.
So how ThinkerNick, the idea of ThinkerNick actually came about. I obviously wanted to start a podcast and I just had no idea what I wanted to talk about. And I thought about it for months. I was thinking about what am I going to talk about? What am I going to do? How can I make this podcast add value to the listeners? And I'm going to backtrack a little bit to 3 years ago where I was with my family in England and we were having Christmas at my grandparents' house. And my aunt, which is Nicola, is very successful with what she does in South Africa. And my aunt and my brother at the time were just sitting around the table talking about different ideas and just, we were catching up and it was great. And then we got onto the conversation of the word leverage. And now I was reading a whole bunch of books and I was thinking to myself, I don't really know what the word leverage means. And now my brother, who is a very hands-on individual, he does everything with his hands. He's actually a marine engineer on a super yacht and he fixes all the motors and the engines. So you can imagine he's like a little grease monkey. And when we were speaking about leverage, the first thing he did is he got a stick of some sort and he put it underneath some sort of object on the table and he pushed down, like as in to show me what leverage was, like a physical description. And even then I was like, oh yes, okay, I get it, that's leverage. But I didn't really know what leverage was in a business sense. All right. So my aunt explained it to me. In fact, would you like to explain to the listeners what leverage is in a business sense? How you would leverage your business?
Well, I mean, in business, something you do is you try and leverage your assets. And some of your assets might be physical assets. So if you've got a building, what's the maximum potential you can get out of your building? But if you're in a professional services company, an asset, and I put that in inverted commas, maybe we'll get to that one day, is your human resources. So a great example is if you take a partnership like a law firm or an accounting firm, what you'll find is a lawyer brings 20 years of experience of law to their practice. And at that level, they're probably known as a partner. But there's a lot of administration and reading and editing and correcting that goes into, for example, a massive contract that you might be doing. So would you want to put someone with 20 years of experience onto the work that might or could be done by someone who's got 2 or 3 years of experience? And quantifiably, the value of that experience in that particular industry is different in terms of the value you can charge for your time. So just for example, I might say if I'm doing administration, I might get $50 an hour. But if I'm doing client engagement or I'm going to court, I might get, $5,000 an hour. So why would you put someone on a project to do $50 an hour work when potentially you could be earning $5,000. So in professional services, leverage is where you try and leverage the skills or the assets of your business to create the maximum gain or value from time, because those are very time-based industries. If you get into other industries and you talk about much harder, more tangible assets, machinery, equipment, if you owned a bakery and a whole bunch of trucks, but you deliver bread to the supermarkets between 4 and 6 in the morning, what's the truck doing for the other 14 or 16 hours a day? So leverage is saying, let me leverage my assets. Let me get the most possible value out of the assets. And the first thing to do is obviously figure out what those assets are.
Excellent. So that's it in a nutshell. That is leverage. So continuing on with the story, I was on a beautiful beach off the coast of Vietnam. There's an island called Con Dao, a very pristine, untouched rural island. And I was strolling on the beach, and I'd been thinking about this podcast for the 3 days that I was there. And I took a long walk this day, and I was walking up and down. And then on my way back, I was walking down to see my friends, and it just hit me. I was like, leverage. And then I thought, what do I have in my life right now that I can leverage? And funny enough, the first thing that popped into my mind was my aunt. She has all of this knowledge, all of this experience, and there's just so much in there, but no one really, I felt that the world needed to hear it. And I also wanted to learn and grow. So I thought, let me leverage my Auntie Nikki. and I phoned her. I literally picked up the phone and I phoned her and I said, Auntie Nikki, I have this idea, and I've pitched ideas to her before, and they don't really, you need something exciting that's going to catch her attention. And I pitched it to her and she said, I'm in. Straight away. She was like, I'm in. Think about it. Think about what you want to do. Let's set it up. I'm in. So this was what, some 4 months ago, 5 months ago now? It was quite a long time ago. It's taken a while to get the ball rolling, but it is finally rolling. And here we are today. Do you remember that phone call?
I do. I thought it was a great idea. And I think the way you sold it was a great idea, because you sort of said, I want to, stuff, or you think I know stuff. Let's see if I know stuff or not. That could be disputable. But the perception is I might have some knowledge and you want access to that knowledge. And possibly there are other people that can provide you with knowledge that I might be able to introduce you to as you evolve your podcast. So I'm excited to be partnering. And I know the ThinkerNick name sort of came because your name's Nicholas and my name's Nicola, which is kind of cool. But I can see eventually going forward into the future, it won't be ThinkerNicks as in two of us. It'll be ThinkerNick. This will be your world.
Well, that's exactly it. And you were very interested. Well, I was. Another reason why I really wanted to do it was, well, like I said, I wanted to learn, but you could give back, because I feel like you're in the swan song of your amazing career. And I felt you would really want to give back, right?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, if I can do anything to add value to other people's lives, I've had so many people add value to mine, directly and indirectly, that if there's ever an opportunity to sort of share what you've learned, I guess that's really the purpose of education, is, you take someone's experience and you pass it on. I guess you can call it pay it forward. So the purpose, I would imagine, of education is actually to learn from others. So if I can do anything that is perceived as value or learning, I'm very happy to contribute.
Yeah. And then the next conversation that we had about this, you were like, the reason why I'm in on this and I really like it is because it's a succession plan. Now, some of the listeners might not know what that is. So would you like to explain kind of what a succession plan is and how it works?
You were obviously listening to everything I said. So if you take an organization, and bear in mind, most of my work has been in business. I've done some work with nonprofit environments, and I've done some work with teachers in the past and some work with what you might call youth in the past. But the dominant part of my career has been in corporate. So you'll probably find that I reference that world a lot. But if you take the leadership of an organization, let's say the organization employs 5,000 people. At the very top of that organization, you might have 500 people that are key. It's what we call leadership. And in leadership positions, you'll find that there are various critical skills. And some of those skills come with different qualifications. But at senior levels, a lot of those skills also come with experience, what you might call tenure. So the longer you've been in a job, you've not just got the experience of the job, but you get access to information that if a stranger came into your business, they wouldn't have all that information to begin with. So you sort of learn directly and you learn indirectly. So what organizations do is they track their leaders and they put them into pools, what they call high potential. Sometimes they reference the word talent. So people with high potential that are in a talent pool will often get access to more learning and development or leadership development. And what companies are trying to do is to say, here's Nicholas. We think he's got potential to lead, to have a bigger role in the business. So what path do we need to put him on? What development path do we need to put him on in order to retain his skills and experience? There are some people that you're quite happy to let go of, but when you've got someone really talented in a business, you value that. And to a large extent, you try to treat them somewhat differently. So a succession plan is saying, if I've got Pete in a particular job, and Pete, just for argument's sake, it was someone that phoned me this morning, his name was Pete. If I've got Pete in a job and Pete is 50, and there is a policy in the business that you have to retire at 55. So in some organizations, 55 is the retirement window. So that means in 5 years' time, I know that Pete, if he doesn't resign or go somewhere else, or heaven forbid pass away in today's world, but if Pete stays for 5 years, I need to find somebody to do his job. Now, if that's a senior position and it's a critical role in the business, I might want somebody from outside to come in and fill that role because I want fresh blood, I want fresh eyes, I want fresh ideas. But if that role really requires that someone deeply understands our business, really knows the nuts and bolts and mechanics of what's going on, then actually I need to find someone in the business to take over Pete's role. That's a successor. So what organizations start to do is they start to identify talent and build what they call succession plans or succession pipelines to make sure that as people transition out of roles, it doesn't have to be retirement, it could be a promotion, but as someone transitions out of a role, they've got someone to transition in. And the appropriate thing to do is to prepare those people if they're in your business, or actually kind of know who you'd want to hire if they're outside of your business. That's where something like headhunting and executive search comes in.
I see. So put simply, in terms of this podcast, we are going to build this podcast together, and then one day I will take it and from whatever foundations we have built, and I will take it further when my aunt is retired on a yacht in France.
Speaking of which, I've got a yacht to catch.
Yeah. Man. Do you have a succession plan in place for when you let go of your business?
That's an interesting one, because there's a part of what my role does in my current business, which is, I would say, things we can hire for. And there's a part of my role that sort of goes with me. It's a bit like you saying, I want to access what you've learned for the last 30 years. So it's quite hard to find the complete substitute, particularly on the delivery side, and obviously on the relationship side. But there are pieces of my role that are recruitable. So we'd have to find somebody to do those pieces of the role and possibly retain some of the other skills into the business. But it's important actually to think about, if you start a business, what are the things you can hire for? And what are the things that are harder to hire for? Because the things that, for example, I'm just going to put something out there today, like websites. I've got to do a website for a small project that I'm doing in the village where I live. So there's a lot of people that can do a basic website. You know, lots of people, basic HTML. I can probably even figure it out myself on what's it called, Wix, WordPress, these types of things. So I've done a little bit of homework there, and it's not, I don't have to look very far to find someone who can help me. Will they be the best? Will it be the, maybe not. And possibly I can't tell, and neither will the people watching the website. So it's a very common skill today to be able to do some basic website and design. But if you go right to the top of that digital chain and you start to look at integration of platforms, and you start to look at sophisticated programming, that's a much harder skill to hire for. So be mindful when you put jobs together, JOBs together in a business. What we tend to do is we try and put what we call job families together. We sort of cluster similar skills, but also you have levels of work, levels of sophistication. So there's some stuff in my job I could quite easily give to anybody. And I'd be happy to. But there's some stuff that's just harder to transfer. It's harder to fill that slot, which is why some people get paid more than others, in essence. You'll get paid more for things that fewer people can do. So
do you have a succession plan in place for your business?
Oh, yeah. I mean, do I have a succession plan? I would say partly. The honest answer is kind of.
Partly. Some of the things people can do, and then some of the business probably at the core people cannot. I just want to touch on our goal. So we started ThinkerNick. We started this project. We're loving the podcast. It's exciting at the moment. We've got a few nice guests lined up, and but what is our goal? I mean, what are we trying to do here? And you were just saying earlier about, wow, you remember everything that I said. And I do remember this as well, which is the goal for you was a Range Rover Sport, and the goal for me was a 3-bedroom house.
But now, right, cool.
Yeah, that was the goal.
I never told me that.
You don't remember?
Right. No, I don't.
You told me that. I
remember saying Range Rover Sport.
Yeah. So
not that I need one, but it was probably just something to put out there. Mm-hmm. Okay, so you want a 3-bedroom house?
I want a 3-bedroom house, but obviously, right now I'm just doing it because I'm passionate about it. But yeah, I mean, you need to work towards something, right? Mm-hmm. And that is my goal. So, I mean, talking about the goal of ThinkerNick, what would you say?
So, I mean, for me, the goal is you. And through you, and I don't mean this in a usury kind of way, but through you, may be able to share some of my learning and knowledge. And I guess the term is pay it forward. I think that's a common phrase these days. And it took me a long time in life to actually think that I might have something to say. I think what we tend to do in life is you keep checking yourself, or you're overcorrecting, or maybe it's not quite good enough yet, or maybe it doesn't make sense. But the difference of a conversation with someone that you know is actually you're saying, hey, and pardon the phrase, Auntie Nikki, can I tap into what your experience is? And it's very important there for you to not think that just because I'm saying it, I'm right. This is just one point of view. There's lots of points of view, but maybe my point of view is a stimulation for you to explore something else as well. So yeah, just to share, I guess, and offload my brain, create space for something new.
Yeah. I mean, a three-bedroom house would be lovely, but the actual goal for me, the reason why I want to do this is because I want to learn and I want to grow. And I do want to start a business, whether it's a small business, whether it grows into a big business. I need to learn how to do it. And that's exactly why we are doing what we are doing. And I just want to touch on one other thing that I noticed is that you said to me, which I remember,
Oh gosh.
when no, this is when I first moved over. You said, remember that when you are teaching, because I'm a teacher, obviously in Vietnam, and you said, remember that when you are teaching your students, that it could have an impact on them for the rest of their lives. In other words, we teach, like as a teacher, and obviously you speak at seminars and things like that, but we teach, but we don't actually, well, I don't actually, I'm not actually aware of what my students are actually absorbing. And now, since we've had this conversation where I'm absorbing all of the stuff that you're telling me, but you don't remember some of it, it's just very interesting for me as a teacher to kind of, now it puts things into perspective for me when I'm in the classroom or when I'm doing, any sort of teaching activity, that the kids are actually absorbing information that you don't think they are, or that you're giving it, but you're not aware that they're absorbing it.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. I mean, I think sometimes in the moment when you're teaching, you're guided by your preparation, for sure. But then things happen in the classroom and you are forced in that environment to respond. And I think in those moments, we're not always acutely aware of the impact that some of those apparently random responses have. And when you work with adults and you ask them to cite examples of influential people in their lives, it might be leaders in a business, but if go and ask any adults who influenced your life, and family members often crop up. And they're not always the direct ones. It's not always mom and dad. It could be, this uncle or a cousin or a stepbrother or something like that. But almost invariably, there will be a teacher. Almost invariably, there will be a teacher. And some of those teachers will have an indelible mark. I mean, it's a permanent mark in our lives. And you don't necessarily appreciate that in the moment. But you can, the impact that you have on self-esteem, how you handle a situation, how you give feedback, how you criticize, how you encourage, are all very big moments for very young minds. It's a big job, actually. I've always been disappointed that teachers are not more highly paid. It's a big job.
It is.
You get lots of holidays, but you get high. But it's a big job.
Well, yeah, it depends. It depends on the school, I guess, that you're employed in. But yeah, we do get a lot of holidays. But hey, we put in a good shift, and we're not getting paid enough, so it's worth it. It's fair. It's fair in the long run. So yeah, just some concluding remarks. Like, the goal is, as we said, to learn and grow. And you were just saying now about basically having a mentor in life, whether it's a family member, whether it's someone close to you.
Yeah.
So in a sense, again, why we're doing ThinkerNick is so I have a mentor in you. And obviously, given the circumstances at the moment with COVID and stuff, this is another reason why ThinkerNick was, bred, because we knew we could do this online and we knew we could get it up and running. And I needed a mentor. I want to start a business. I've had some failed attempts. And I think that this is something that I'm passionate about now, and something that is going to take off eventually. And the good thing about ThinkerNick, about this one, like I said, I've had a few failed attempts. The good thing about this one is it just feels natural. It just feels right. It's something, and we're here to have fun, and we're here to learn, and we're here to grow, and that's what ThinkerNick is about in a nutshell.
Yeah.
So we hope that we hope that we can bring, fantastic value to our listeners, as well as have fun ourselves. I mean,
Yeah.
what more could you ask for?
Yeah, it would be very cool.
Yeah.
It's also it's exciting to do it. It's also an opportunity, given these circumstances. Everyone's living in a different part of the world, and so I get to spend time with you, good time, like proper conversation time, the kind of time we might have spent together when you were here in Cape Town.
Yeah.
But we're making it much more deliberate, so it's more likely to happen. So thanks, Nick.
Exactly.
I'm excited.
Yes. I'm also very excited. And on that note, we are going to conclude the first episode of the ThinkerNick Podcast, the pilot episode with me and Nicola. We will have some exciting guests coming on in the near future, so watch out for that. But until next time, I'm your host, Nick Daniels. This is my co-host, Nicola Tyler. Take care. Stay safe. Cheers.
Cheers, Nick.
For more news and content about ThinkerNick, go to www.thinkernick.com or visit our Facebook or Instagram pages @ThinkerNick.